welcome back, dear students. As we started the previous, in the first class, we finished off the first part of A Letter to God. And today we are going to start with part 2. In continuation of the chapter, we are going to start with part 2 today. In the previous section, that is in part 1, we have seen how hailstorm destroyed the crops of Lencho. How Lencho became very sad and hopeless, which eventually made him conclude that they would go hungry that year. So what actually happened after that? Let us try to discover it. I hope you will have the text open when we had this audio discussion, but I'm not going to start from where we ended. I'm still going to start afresh. So let us see what actually happened after that. But in the hearts of all who lived in that solitary house in the middle of the valley, there was a single hope: help from God. Don't be so upset, even though this seems like a total loss. Remember, no one dies of hunger. That is what they say. No one dies of hunger. Although all through the night, Lencho thought only of his one hope, the help of God, whose eyes, as he had been instructed, see everything, even what is deep in one's conscience. Lencho was an ox of a man, working like an animal in the fields, but still he knew how to write. The following Sunday, at daybreak, he began to write a letter, which he himself would carry to town and place in the mail. It was nothing less than a letter to God. God, he wrote, if you don't help me, my family and I will go hungry this year. I need 100 pesos in order to sow my field again and to live until the crop comes, because the hailstorm. See what happened actually. Although he was hopeless, although he knew it pretty well, that there was no hope left, no human hope left for him, deep in his heart, there was one thing: that he would get help from God. He remembered the sermon-based teaching. He remembered the holy teaching. Don't be so upset, even though this seems like a total loss. Yeah, we are always advised this way. We have to be patient. We have to be calm and quiet. Remember, no one dies of hunger, and that very statement, that very lesson worked like a magic line. It was a silver line to him. He said what? That's what they say. No one dies of hunger. And this is what is to be remembered. And that means God is there to see. He remembered another lesson. All through the night, Lencho did what? Lencho thought only of his one hope. What is that hope? The help of God, whose eyes, as he had been instructed, see everything. Keep an eye on this line. Whose eyes, as he had been instructed. What is it? As he had been instructed. See, it's a passive statement, means the doer of action is absent. The doer of action is absent. But the stress is given on what? The stress is given on the receiver of action. As he had been instructed. What is it? That God, whose eyes see everything, even what is deep in one's conscience. What is it? That God's eyes see everything, even what is deep in one's conscience. I told you earlier about the meaning of the word conscience. In Hindi or Bengali, we use the word vivek for it. Our inner self. That is true. That is truthful. Now the next sentence. Lencho was an ox of a man, working like an animal in the fields, but still he knew how to write. See the contrast in the statement. Lencho was an ox of a man. See, an ox is an animal known for its hard work. An ox is an animal known for its hard work. And what is said? Lencho was an ox of a man. Means Lencho was as hardworking as an ox, working like an animal in the fields. But, see the contrast? But still he knew how to write. Still he knew how to write. The following Sunday at daybreak, he began to write a letter which he himself would carry to town and place in the mail. It was nothing less than a letter to God. See, again, this statement is also important. So before that, we found what? That the following Sunday, he did what? At daybreak, means at early morning, he began to write a letter. What is it? He began to write a letter which he himself would carry. He didn't send it by a media. He himself carried it and placed it in the mail, post office. What actually happened? What was that letter about? It was nothing less than a letter to God. So when we say, like, he paid me nothing less than rupees 5, not less than rupees 5. That means what? He paid me, at least he paid me 5 rupees. So just like that, it was nothing less than a letter to God. That means what? In a way we can conclude that it was a letter to God. He wrote a letter to God. Now what he wrote there? God, he wrote, if you don't help me, my family and I will go hungry this year. I need 100 pesos in order to sow my field again and to live until the crop comes, because the hailstorm, and we know the period signs. So what is said here? If you don't help me, he wrote what? See how pure-hearted he was, how good-hearted he was, how truthful he was. He said what? God, if you don't help me, my family and I will go hungry this year. And he was straightforward. He said what? I need 100 pesos, exactly the amount he needed. I need, now it is your task to find out what the word peso means. It's a currency, it's very simple, you know it pretty well. But which country is your answer? I want answer from you. Now, I need 100 pesos in order to sow my field again and to live until the crop comes. So he was straightforward, you see. He was straightforward. Why so? Why did he write a letter to God? Because he was in need of money. Why did he need money all of a sudden? And that also from God. Because the hailstorm, and the story you know what actually happened. Then he wrote to God on the envelope, put the letter inside, and still troubled, still disturbed, went to town because he had to post the letter. At the post office, he placed a stamp on the letter and dropped it into the mailbox. Now the most important thing, see, he wrote what? To God. And only this bit, because neither he nor we know the address of God. And we had movies also, as I referred to it. Oh my God, the movie. Okay, so he wrote to God on the envelope, put the letter inside, and still troubled, went to town. At the post office, he placed a stamp on the letter, and then he did what? That's very important. He placed a stamp on the letter. You know it pretty well. In order to post a letter, you need to affix a stamp. So he placed a stamp on the letter and dropped it into the mailbox. One of the employees, who was a postman and also helped at the post office, went to his boss, laughing heartily, showed him the letter to God. Never in his career as a postman had he known that address. The postmaster, a fat, amiable fellow. Observe the meaning, amiable. It stands for friendly and pleasant. Oh, you are lucky, you need not search much. The word peso, go for the meaning. Currency of several Latin American countries. Okay, so let's continue. The postmaster, a fat, amiable fellow, also broke out laughing. But almost immediately he turned serious and, tapping the letter on his desk, commented, "What faith! I wish I had the faith of the man who wrote this letter. Starting up a correspondence with God." So, in order not to shake the writer's faith in God, the postmaster came up with an idea, answered the letter. But when he opened it, it was evident that to answer it, he needed something more than goodwill, ink and paper. but stuck to his resolution. He asked for money from his employees. He himself gave part of his salary, and several friends of his were obliged to give something for an act of charity. It was impossible for him to gather together the 100 pesos. So he was able to send the farmer only a little more than half. He put the money in an envelope addressed to Lencho, and with it a letter containing only a single word as a signature: God. See, things are working. His faith and the response. We sometimes say God does not come. We sometimes say so, that human beings function as the messengers, as the embodiments of God. And we are also instructed to help life, to help human beings, to help all in the name of service to God. See what happened, how beautiful the things are. When he wrote the letter, he wrote and detailed everything and posted the letter. One of the employees, who was a postman and who also helped at the post office, went to his boss laughing heartily. It's a joyful thing. Can you ever expect a letter being written to God, addressed to God? So it was like that. He saw it and started laughing, and then went to the postmaster and showed. Boss of a post office is postmaster. So he went to the postmaster and showed him the letter to God. Now the next sentence is very important. I want you to write 3 sentences of this kind. See, never in his career as a postman had he known that address. I repeat, never in his career as a postman had he known that address. It starts with an adverb. Never. Never in his career as a postman had he known that address. Clear? The auxiliary verb had comes before the subject he. It's not he had known that address, it's had he known that address. We can come up with similar sentences. Never in my life as a student had I seen such a situation. So this COVID-19 situation can be expressed also. Never in my career or in my life as a student had I seen or witnessed a situation like this. So similar statement is there. Never in his career as a postman had he known that address. The postmaster, a fat, amiable fellow, also broke out laughing. Now, who was that postmaster? His description, physical description is given here. You see, the postmaster, a fat, amiable fellow, also broke out laughing. But almost immediately, he turned serious. He laughed and then thought, and that thought made him serious. Almost immediately, he turned serious. Tapping the letter on his desk, commented. He was awestruck. What faith! I wish I had the faith of the man who wrote this letter. Starting up a correspondence, a communication with God. And so, he was also a good man. And that's why he decided what? No, I should not shake his faith. I cannot post the letter to God because I don't know God's address, but I should not shake his faith. I should try to keep his faith. And so, in order not to shake the writer's faith in God, the postmaster came up with an idea. Answered the letter. He decided, no, I will respond to the letter, I will answer the letter on behalf of God. But when he opened it, it was evident, it was clear that to answer it, he needed something more than goodwill. Mere goodwill won't do. Goodwill, ink and paper won't do. It needed something more. Because you know, Lencho wrote the letter and demanded 100 pesos. So that must be given. So normally he should have discontinued the communication. He would have gone against his decision, but he didn't do it. He stuck to his resolution. Whatever decision he took, he stuck to it. He asked for money from his employees. He himself gave part of his salary, and several friends of his were obliged to give something for an act of charity. See, we know the word charity. During this lockdown period, you must have observed many people coming up to help others, help the needy. That's an act of charity. So, he did what? He himself gave part of his salary, and several friends of his were obliged to give something for an act of charity. It was impossible for him to gather together the 100 pesos. It's a huge amount in a way. So, he was able to send the farmer only a little more than half. Means 50 pesos, more than 50 pesos. He put the money in an envelope addressed to Lencho with it a letter containing only a single word as a signature: God. He didn't write anything else. Let's see how Lencho responded to the letter, or whether he got it or not. For that, we'll have to go to the next class. Let's wait.